Is Bitcoin a good bet? Well, in today's video, that's the question I hope to answer. Now, before we start, let's have our disclaimers. First of all, this is not financial advice. I will never give you financial advice. And second of all, I have no math or finance background. So with that said, let me tell you a story. Before the NBA season started, I bet $2,000 on Kyrie Irving to win MVP. And it wasn't because I thought that Kyrie was going to win. I actually thought he was an underdog. But the discrepancy between his actual odds that I got, 30-1, and what I thought he was, about an 8-1, was so great that I knew I was getting my money in good. And so that leads to expected value. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, instead of betting on Kyrie Irving, we're betting on Bitcoin, possibly. So expected value is a mathematical formula to calculate how good or bad an investment is. So in today's video, I'm going to give you, I'm going to go over one formula with one variable where we talk about whether betting on Bitcoin is worth it or not. And to start off, let's just make it clear that we are betting, we are gambling, we are putting it all on the line. No matter how much we research this stuff, if we just researched every day nonstop, which is close to what I do, but even if we do that, we're not investing. And why are we not investing? Because there is so much uncertainty that this all leads to speculation. Because we have no way of having solid footing in the cryptocurrency markets. It's not possible right now. There's too much going on. There's too many things that can swing things. So we're speculating, we're gambling, we're investing. That's what we're doing. So with Bitcoin, it's been put out there by one person, John McAfee, and then more subsequently, that Bitcoin will hit $1 million. So if the bet is successful, then Bitcoin's going to reach $1 million. And we don't know exactly what time, but John McAfee said 2020, but let's just put it within the next 5 years, Bitcoin hits $1 million. We'll say that's on one end of the spectrum. And on the other end of the spectrum, I've got it down $1,000. Now you can put what you want here, but I'm saying if Bitcoin is ultimately unsuccessful and becomes more like a relic that we talk about, like MySpace, then maybe it gets to $1,000, maybe worse, but I assigned $1,000 if I'm successful. So right now, as I'm making this video, Bitcoin is not at 20,000. It's not even close to there. It's about 14,000. But I'm going to go ahead and say that right now, Bitcoin is at 20,000 just to make this video age better. So let's say that Bitcoin is currently $20,000. So what we've got here is, if we're right, Bitcoin is going to hit $1 million, and if we're wrong, Bitcoin is going to go down to 1,000. So in this scenario, we would lose $19,000. We'd have $19,000 down the drain, gone forever. You're never seeing it again. So with expected value, here's the mathematical formula that we're going to undergo to decide if this is a good bet. This is where we want to put our money. So it's the probability of winning $1 million times the amount won if correct, so $980,000, minus the probability of losing times the amount lost if wrong, so $19,000. So here's the formula all written out. And what I've done here, and let me get a marker, is I have assigned a 5% chance of Bitcoin ever hitting $1 million. That is very key. Okay, you can't just take me out $5,000. This could be lower. This could very well be lower. It might be higher, but that's very key. Is the probability you assign to something hitting a mark. Okay, so I pulled 5% out of thin air. I think it's within the realm of possibility, and I want it to be somewhat conservative. I do think Bitcoin does have a future, but at $1 million within 5 years, I don't know. But I went ahead and assigned 5%. So this is a variable that is based on assumptions. Okay, and then we're going to times that by $1 million if we're successful, and then we subtract 95%, and that's the rate of unsuccessful. So if let's say it just never hits $1 million, times $19,000, which is what we stand to lose. So ultimately, that comes out to $50,000 minus $18,050 for an expected value of $31,950. So if we bet on our $20,000 Bitcoin, then we are expected to get $31,950 out of that. And that's because we can't we can't work under the binary options. We can't, I mean, not binary options, but we can't work on under two only binary possibilities because we just don't know. It's not a matter of yes or no. It's a matter of probability. So it might hit 1,000,000, it might hit 1,000, but we've got to weight these according to our best guess at probabilities. So doing so, we come out with an expected value of $31,950 of benefit for placing a $20,000 bet, and that would give you a 159% return. Okay, so under this scenario, assuming that Bitcoin can hit 5%, which I will tell you that several people that are well thought out and well respected in the entrepreneurial or venture capital realm have said that Bitcoin can hit $1 million. It's important to remember, though, that those cheerleaders also hold a lot of Bitcoin. Typically, they hold a lot of Bitcoin, and so they have incentive to say that. Their interests are aligned with that happening. So there's bias there. So that's important to remember as well. Nevertheless, a lot of prominent people have put that out there. And then you have other prominent people, such as Mark Cuban, who are putting a little bit of money into Bitcoin as a way of hedging their bets, as a way of saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but maybe it's within the realm of possibility, so I'll put some money over here just in case. Okay, so we can see it has a positive expected value. Now, the two things that I'm looking for, and the two things that I was looking for when I bet on Kyrie was, one, does it have a positive expected value? And two, is this a realistic chance of happening? Because we can go to the horse track and we can see this, a 5,000 to 1 horse, but if the horse has a broken leg, there's just no way it's going to happen. Even what if we signed 4,900 to 1 chance? Well, that would give us a positive expected value, but it's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. So sometimes when we look at things in theory, that they work out and that we would technically have a positive EV, but it wouldn't work out in real life. So it's just throwing your money away, and you have to have that realistic chance of hitting home. And I do think there is a realistic chance that it could hit $1 million. So again, as I was saying before, the probability assigned is crucial. If you go and you determine that the EV is only not the EV, but the probability of hitting $1 million, if you go ahead and decide that it's only 0.5%, then that's going to completely flip-flop these numbers, and it's going to make it to where you get a negative EV, and you wouldn't want to bet onto Bitcoin. So that's important. And then and you would do that after researching the market and studying and finding out as much as you can. And so you would think, that'd be investing, but you have to remember, as I said before, this is a highly uncertain market, and it leads to speculative investing. So you have your research, but you have to say it's speculative, and under speculative I have gambling, because that's what speculation is. It's gambling. It's a game of chance and uncertainties and probabilities. So we are down to gambling. Okay, we're down to speculative investing. So you have to be able to live with that risk. So when I say live with that risk, let's look at an example here. If you've ever played poker, Texas Hold'em, you know that pocket aces are the best starting hand. And you're about, if you have pocket aces, you're about at 80% chance to win. At least heads up. So you've got pocket aces, but you still are not certain to win. You have got the best possible hand, but you still don't have that certainty to win. So that's why it's important that you don't put in money you can't afford to lose, because if you do, there is a likelihood that you will lose, no matter how technically right you are. I think a lot of people have gone and played poker, and then you have pocket aces, and then you just see them get washed away by just some random hand. So just because you make a good bet, a good speculation, does not mean you will win. It's important to keep that in mind. So, and another thing, underscoring that, is just because you are technically right doesn't mean you are right. Okay. So when I say that, there could be something like, just because Bitcoin really does have the underlying fundamentals to become this world currency, and just because the path is, you research the path and everything lines up and your markers are all correct, it doesn't mean that there can't be some outside event, there can't be a black swan, or maybe even something that's foreseen that comes and washes all of your research and your all of your research and information awry. Okay, that can all go out the way. So being real, it's important to be real world right, not just technically right. Technically right is great, but it's got to, you ultimately you want to see the money in your bank account at the end. So that's important to remember as well. Now, coming back here, we want to stack and collect as many positive EV bets as possible. So that's what I was starting to do with the Kyrie Irving bet. It wasn't that I was expecting to win, it was just a really high EV for to bet on Kyrie. And that's what, if you are betting on Bitcoin, you have this really high EV even at a 5% chance. So what you have to get in here is that you can be very wrong and still make a good bet. It's a good bet objectively, but in the end, it may be even unlikely to pan out, but it's just that if it does, your returns are so great that it was a worthwhile bet. So what you would like to do is stack as many of them as possible. And as you can see, I just said here, the outcome may be negative, but the more bets you make, the more likely you end in the net positive. So it's just like if you keep getting pocket aces and you just keep getting them over and over and over again, and you just keep on going all in, it's going to be, eventually you're going to turn out in the positive, because if you stack 80% chance and the next 10 you have an 80% chance, you're likely going to win. Even you might get unlucky once, you might get unlucky twice, but if you keep making high EV bets, then you're going to eventually end up in the positive. But remember here, when we're looking at Bitcoin, this is a single occurrence thing. We're only getting one. I mean, as we're looking at it now, there's only one shot. It's either, Bitcoin hits $1 million or it doesn't. So just because it's a positive EV doesn't mean you have that stack feature. It doesn't mean you're collecting a bunch of bets. You could do that with other things. Maybe there's other cryptocurrencies, but in this scenario, there's only one single occurrence thing that you are betting on. And then so what we've also got to keep in mind as we look at EV, as we evolve after we place our original bet or we don't place it, is that there is Bayesian analysis. And so that means because things change, we've got to continue to update our probabilities and our payoffs and adjust our formula. So if we hear some bad news, maybe bad news for Bitcoin, maybe this does become the number to put into. And at that point, you wouldn't want to place any more bets, okay? So it's important to keep in mind that this is definitely a dynamic environment and things are certainly changing. So what this all amounts to is you want to get your money in good as long as you can afford to watch your money go by and be okay with it, because some people cannot psychologically handle losing, and they might, you might see, okay, well, this is a positive EV, I'm going to put my money in. Well, don't do that if you can't watch it walk away, because as I just said, even under my probability assignment, I said there's a 19 and 20 chance that you go down to 1,000. Okay, so that means you lose $19,000. So you've got to keep that in mind. It's very, very, very important. Okay, so you might indeed lose your money, but again, if you are a gambler and you like to gamble and you don't mind watching your money blow off into the wind, then you, under my probability assignments, then you have got your money in good. And so that's why, even knowing that Kyrie's probably not going to win the MVP, it's okay with me. I'm at peace with it because I know that I got my money in good, and that I gave myself exposure. I gave myself exposure to a high payoff, and I didn't have to risk that much. So when you're betting on Bitcoin, those are the things to look at. And again, I don't have math or finance background, but this is what I pieced together, and hopefully this has helped. If any of my math is wrong or I misspoke in any way, and I sincerely mean this, please correct me in the comments, and I will update the description below. But thank you for watching, and I hope this helps when you are deciding whether to put any money in Bitcoin. I will not advise you on what to do. I can tell you what I will do is that when it reaches a certain price point, I will just put a little money in every time. Only what I can afford to lose.